What's going on, guys? I appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode of Second Guessing with Stressing. I know it's been a while. It's kind of been a hectic schedule lately with the holidays and all that stuff. So, kind of got off our normal routine here, but I appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you being patient with me, having some technical difficulties as usual. Typically happens to me. If you could, someone in the chat, if you could just drop a comment just to make sure we're good. I am using a new microphone. I'm using my wife's computer because my camera is broken on my laptop. I don't know why. And I'm also using a new streaming service so I can connect to TikTok. Hopefully, TikTok is connected as well. But yeah, so I got a lot going on for me, and I usually have trouble regardless. But I do appreciate y'all tuning in, and hope y'all had a good holidays, good Christmas, good New Year's. I know it's always a fun time of the year for everybody with friends and family. So normally we kind of recap our previous game and then preview the next game. So I'll be doing the same thing. Shout out Beto. Appreciate you letting me know. And this new service, Restream, I like. I got back on it because it can stream to TikTok live, but it's pretty cool. You can do the comments right here. I like that. 'Cause that's kind of when I started doing this stuff on the shows. I've always go into each show with like a plan to have like a scheduled, do this, do that. But I kind of like just talking with everybody, going back and forth. So that'll be cool for y'all to see the comments up there. I think I might have to press it. It should just do it automatically, but yeah, it does automatically. So, but yeah, I mean, hopefully y'all had a good holidays. Let me know how they went. If I got any questions, just fire away. I'll kind of just, ramble like I normally do and try to cover the previous game while I do, as well as the upcoming game against the Titans, which, in my opinion, is kind of a meaningless game. But it looks like when I'm on here, if I put the comments on, that it takes away my camera. So let me put the comments back by trying to do just me talking and then maybe overlay the comments that way. That might be the best way. All right. Yeah, there we go. And y'all can see too, I got my new sign, Texans commenter, from my brother. Shout out my brother. He was my secret Santa. He got me that. He got me this new mic here, which evidently, if you tap, I was muted because I tapped the mic. So I'm learning some stuff here. I appreciate you guys being patient. And yeah, I just threw this stuff up on the wall real quick. I've been meaning to get like a legit setup. I'll kind of add more to it eventually. I need a whole new house. I need a new room or a new office to put stuff in. But I'm trying to make it a better presentation. But I appreciate y'all guys tuning in. But yeah, I mean, I'll just start off with the game against the Ravens, man. I mean, that was I've had time to digest it, but I think we were all pretty down on that one. Like I was saying earlier, I always say, are we blessing or stressing? Sometimes we're depressing, and that was the most I had been depressing as a Texans fan in a while. I guess I should rewind since I haven't talked to you all live since the Chiefs game. I'll start with that game. That game, we went into that gauntlet of 3 games in 11 days against the Dolphins, Chiefs, and Ravens. We beat the Dolphins. I thought that was a good win. And, it was still the same kind of win where a lot of us felt we could have been more dominant, but in the end, it was still, a hard fought victory against, in my opinion, a pretty good Dolphins team. But going into Kansas City, between Kansas City and Baltimore, I personally just wanted to see us win one of those two just to feel like we are an actual contender and can hang with the big dogs heading into the playoffs. And then the Chiefs game, I actually walked away from the Chiefs game feeling pretty good, except, considering the injuries happened. But injuries aside, I thought we hung in there. It was an 8-point game. And I hate to say it, I'm usually not that guy, but the refs were absolutely terrible in that Chiefs game. So when I considered that, the fact that it was a loud road environment in the cold weather, it was a playoff type atmosphere, somewhere that we have not done well as this young team has played the past 2 years. You think about the Ravens last year, and then any loud road playoff game or cold, Jets twice played bad there. Minnesota played bad. This was the better game for us, in my opinion, the best game as far as how we handled those conditions. And like I said, the refs were terrible. It was encouraging. The offense was getting going. even though they didn't score. They scored 20 points, I believe. But I thought there was signs of promise. But the injuries, man, like if there weren't the injuries, I would have been feeling really good. And I feel like they were two critical injuries. Tank Dell, man, I mean, I feel terrible for him. Prayers out to Tank. Hope for a speedy recovery. But I mean, the dude can't catch a break. Comes out awesome rookie year, and then breaks his leg in the middle of a run play on the goal line. Not sure if it's the same teammate or not that did it, but breaks that leg. Then later gets shot in the same leg. Still comes back all year. Hasn't really gotten involved like we'd all like or like he would like. And then finally has his breakout game and like having a huge impact. And then he gets hurt by his own teammate again. And then there's the whole thing of everyone being emotional, CJ being emotional. Supposedly he was screaming on the field, dislocated his kneecap. Evidently, it's like a pretty threatening injury to where your kneecap can rupture some blood vessels and you could potentially die or have your leg amputated. So that was terrible. And then the fact that he was playing good, and then Jimmy Ward's injury was kind of overlooked. I thought that was a big injury too, because we had already lost Petrie, who was moved into that nickel role as a safety, which was essentially like a linebacker, that star position. And then Jimmy Ward stepped in, basically almost a 1-for-1. He wasn't quite as elite as Jalen was, but I feel like his skill set suited that role pretty well, and he was playing good. And so now with him out, you're forced to change the whole defense. And him coming out in that game against the Chiefs really, might have cost us the game. We had to move Kamari to slot at times. He played well, but then that brought Jeff Okudah outside, and he was kind of getting picked on. Miles Bryant played some at slot, and he was getting picked on. So that was a big deal too. And Jimmy and Jalen are like versatile pieces where D'Amico's able to get creative and have blitzes and all that good stuff to kind of cause chaos. So that was a big injury, but if those injuries wouldn't have happened, I would have felt good about the game. I still felt good about it, but like the outlet going forward, it was tough. And I'll answer a couple of questions in the chat, and then I'll get to the Ravens game. Over on IG, D-Man says, what's going on with CJ? I think it's a number of things. He definitely has had his struggles personally, and I'll talk about it. I guess I'll just say it now, and then I'll kind of circle back when I talk about the Ravens. But I had tweeted it, and I still think the same. But I think that was CJ's worst game as a professional that I've seen. For this, for the fact that he was inaccurate. I've never seen him so inaccurate. And he still has been inaccurate this year, but like the amount of inaccurate throws he had was kind of like eye popping for me. He just seemed different. I'm sure the Tank injury was still affecting him. It's been it's going to sound like I'm making excuses here, but I'm just kind of laying some things out. It's been a long season. It's been a tough season for him, but we had, the earliest start of the season with the extra game in the Hall of Fame preseason game, and then the latest bye. And the bye was a couple weeks ago, but still, like, it's been a long drudge of a season. Young team, second year head coach, second year offensive coordinator, second year quarterback. You got this long schedule. You got a whole bunch of primetime games. So you're playing Sunday night. You're playing Monday night. You're playing Thursday night. Just all these different days. Wednesday night. You can't really get in your routine. Again, this probably sounds like excuse making, but I'm just kind of painting a picture here. But and then CJ goes into the game. Like I said, he was inaccurate. People are speculating he was hurt during the game, or maybe even hurt before. His presser after, he kind of alluded to it. He had mentioned something. I believe Big Sarge had asked him, the question that I'm being asked here about, what's wrong with CJ. Essentially, how come you're not as good as you were last year? Essentially, and he started to say, I've been banged up, and then he stopped himself and said, no, it's not an excuse. So we don't know if his shoulder, it sounds like his shoulder. People are speculating knee, stuff like that too. But you can definitely tell there is something hindering him for his throwing and his accuracy. But there's also the same stuff, the struggles that aren't excusable for injuries. It's, I hate to admit it, I guess it is a little bit of a sophomore slump. I think for a multitude of reasons. To me, the biggest thing is it starts with the O-line and it trickles down from there. And from there, it's O-line, play caller. And you can't blame the guy when you get pressured as early and often as he does. And the thing too is not all pressures are created equal. When you get pressured in like under 2 seconds or 1 second, when you have a free rusher untouched, those are the ones that are really the most hurtful. And I think we probably lead the league in that. I forget the numbers, but those are the ones that are affecting CJ, in my opinion. I mean, you can't blame the guy for some of the stuff he's done. I mean, he's taking snaps under center, and every other play he's getting, a free rusher coming after him in no time. I mean, who wouldn't be affected by that going down the road? So it does look bad later in the game, like the Ravens game, a microcosm in itself. You know, there was those kind of plays and pressures all around, but then there's plays when there wasn't, and then we all, when there wasn't pressure, CJ's still reacting the same, and it makes him look bad. And we wonder why he's doing it. It's like, well, shit. I mean, he's been getting pressured all year, so it's an excuse and it's not. But that's my opinion. Why? I'm pretty sure his internal clock is sped up because of that. That's causing him to either go through his reads too quickly or not altogether. It's causing him to speed up his mechanics. So you're seeing some of these inaccurate throws where he's not setting his feet. It's causing him to flush the pocket way too soon at times. And again, I can't blame him. So it's been a myriad of stuff. I think part of it too is a sophomore slump for Bobby. I think teams have adjusted to his play calling. Specifically the condensed formations. They're good and bad, but teams this year are now nickel blitzing and safety blitzing us off of that because we're inviting defenders into the box and then they just blitz and we have no answer for it. Typically you see if, another problem is we don't get to the line of scrimmage fast enough. That's probably because indecision on the play call and the play call itself is way too long. So it takes Bobby X amount of seconds to tell CJ to play, and then he's got to repeat it to the O-line or to the team. And then when you get to the line of scrimmage, you got 10 seconds at the best, typically 5 seconds or less. And then at that point, you have no time to, one, really read the defense, two, to try a hard count to get them to bluff, to show their hand, to see who's blitzing. And then another part of the whole thing, too, is, from what I understand from listening to some national pundits, former players talk about the pass protection scheme within this scheme for Bobby and the Shanahan tree. They try and make it as easy as possible for the quarterback, but it's actually counterintuitive because by not allowing the quarterback to be involved, they make it tougher on him. So you're now putting 100% trust in your O-line to make the protection and make it correctly and do it with little time left. And then the quarterback isn't quite on the same page. Whereas if he was the one setting the protection, he sees what he sees and it comes from him. But on the nickel blitzes, we've seen far too often where a defensive back will blitz. And typically when, if you're running a route and the guy right in front of you covering you blitzes, all you do is you just turn your head around. Like it's called a hot route. Like, 'cause you're hot. You just look, you have your route, like it's a corner, post, whatever. Your guy blitzes, you look back to see if he can throw you the ball. Not if not, you keep running. But I haven't seen us do that once. And so I don't know if that's just the scheme or if the receivers aren't doing their job. It looks like on a lot of these blitzes, like CJ's looking at the receiver where the defender blitzes and they just keep running and never turn around. And, they're running like a 10, 15, 20-yard route most of the time. And if they would have a hot route built in, again, I don't know who's at fault, but if this receiver, whether it's the tight end or whoever else, when their defender covering them blitzes just turned around, they would catch the ball in space with no one, 10 plus yards from them and would have an easy first down. So like that to me is very frustrating. I think that's part of it. So yeah, I mean, it's CJ himself, is having his own troubles. The O-line is the biggest part. And the second biggest part is Bobby Slowick. Him not adjusting to people adjusting to him. They've figured him out. It started in week 1 with Indy. They beat us with simple stunts, looping around games with, their ends and tackles. And every team's ran that since. And then again, in the Vikings game, the blueprint was also given to how to beat this offense for our team, which was the Vikings, in which they did like a lot of simulated pressures. They mugged the line of scrimmage, a Brian Flores defense where they bring in 8, 9, 10 guys in the box, and then they drop most of them back. So they basically show a blitz and don't blitz, or they'll do a zone blitz where a nickel or a linebacker will blitz, but then a lineman will drop back and replace them. And then, just these simple little mental games have proven to, just destroy our offensive line. Like they have no answer for it. Just the whole protection as a whole, linemen, tight ends, running backs. It's these simple stunts, simple simulated pressures, simple zone blitz, simple blitzes. Uh, so it just, like the pass protection rules, I don't know exactly how they are. I know we slide a lot. So you kind of like, three, four guys slide this way and these guys got this side. But I think part of the issue with that is like, most of the time when we're getting beat, especially in these untouched pressures that are the most significant I've talked about, it's not physical, it's mental. Like we're just mentally messing up. Like if we just had a simpler offense where you just said, hey, block the guy right in front of you. And if he leaves, stay in your area. That's another thing too. On a lot of these stunts, I feel like the linemen, they're too impatient. So you'll have the guy in front of you go across your face and they'll run with them and no, that's my guy. I'm gonna get him. But then the other guy loops around and he's right there. So rather than kind of like staying in your area and waiting for work, you got it. Okay, he moves, pass him off. I'm gonna wait for the next guy, and you'll see like a lot of these sacks too. It's embarrassing. I mean, um, you'll have two and three linemen just standing around looking around while two or three rushers are there. It's like they don't know where to look for work. It's just bad from all around. It's not just one thing on the offense. Even as of late, I will say in that Baltimore game too that it's not being talked about enough. The Tank Dell injury was significant. It forced guys like Hutchinson and Mechie and other guys that haven't been getting as many reps to play receiver, and they had some mental mistakes too. So, like, I don't know if we've seen like one drive this year, much less several plays in a row where everyone's done their job. Like, you hate to say it, you hate to hear it, but execution's terrible. There's always it's just we're never on the same page. It's not all 11 are doing their jobs at the right time. And as Uncle Ted says, sacks are momentum killers. That's right. So the precipice of all of our struggles is third and long. And if you kind of deduct back from that, it's early downs. Run blocking is terrible. So we have too many negative rushes. We have too many sacks on early downs. So now you're always in third and longs, and defenses can now have these exotic blitzes. Or part of it too is, a lot of defenses this year have ran a lot of too high shells, basically cover two. And, with that, they're basically have a lot of guys in coverage, preventing the deep ball, pretty much forcing you to run it. And we can't run it. So now when the defense wants you to run it, you can't run it. So now you got to try and pass it against this coverage. The second part of that is when you pass against these coverages, primarily cover two, you need to be more patient. And so the issue with that is, I think that's been the biggest thing for CJ is you get stuck in these third and longs. So he's wanting to get the first down and needing to get the first down against the coverage that's preventing the big play. And so rather than, taking the check down and hoping that guy breaks a tackle, all that stuff, he's forcing these, just like the Chiefs game, the pick to Nico Collins, it was 2-man and he tried to fit this ball into a crazy window, which he has done before, but it's just not a good play. But also on that too, he didn't really have many options for checkdowns itself. So it also becomes, tough for a play caller on third and long to dial up the right play. There's a lot that goes into it. And as Uncle Ted says right there, I agree with this. I've been saying this too. If you're getting a lot of cover two, the route that beats cover two the best is slants. And the guy that we just signed, Deontay Johnson, off waivers, that we claimed off waivers, in my opinion, is a great slant route runner. We've seen it on tape, and then if you just watch, his workout videos, the way he is, he's real shifty. He's elusive at the line of scrimmage. I think he's a great slant route runner. And so for this game coming up against the Titans, I want to see him get a bunch of reps. He may not know the playbook fully, but I mean, at this point, you can just give him hand signals. You could just put him backside on a 3-by-1 formation, man-to-man coverage, or if it's in cover two, I would just hand signal him routes. I would just throw him slants. That's something we've been missing. Basically, we need more quick game to negate the pressure and hit these little slants against cover two. True Texan says the biggest thing for me is lack of effort. I think the defense can't carry the weight for much longer, and that showed a lot against Baltimore. Have to be better in third and short situations. Yeah, I agree. I think that's like the most frustrating for all of us too, with the O-line. I mean, they do get beat mentally, but I mean, that's probably the most frustrating thing is when we see, you know, a player, on the O-line just get beat and then, like, rather than like continue to try and chase the play, they just kind of give up. And then you see CJ getting hit and they're just kind of standing around him. Like, it's very frustrating as a fan to watch that. I agree with that. Uncle Ted says go down the middle with tight ends. Yeah, that's another thing with cover two. You can run like bender routes. So you could have, if it's too high safeties, if you have verticals from the slots from tight end and slot receiver, depending on what the safeties do, you can kind of bend your routes over the middle. There's a lot to be done. Pepito H15 on Instagram says, is Tank likely to play next season? Reports are it's going to be tough. I think it will be tough. Um, let's see. Anshra Togi07 on IG says, minus the screens, yes. I'm not sure what that's in regards to, but yeah, the screens have been frustrating. D Man says, what's going on with CJ? That's what I had answered. But yeah, the screens too. I mean, I think some of y'all had saw the video from Wade Smith where he talked about, he made good points about it. Basically, and I had said this too, like the screens that we all got frustrated with against the Chiefs. It's an extension of the run game. When you can't run the ball, you have to get creative. And Bobby has said in his pressers that they have worked earlier in the year, which I agree they have. We've been one of the better screen teams, but again, to my point earlier, it's just not all 11 execute at the same time. So one play, CJ throws a bad ball on a screen. The next play, Nico may run his screen the wrong way. The next play, Hutchinson will miss his block on the screen. It's like we can never just all be on the same page at the same time. And that kind of goes back to coaching and execution, which we hate to hear. But yeah, so it's been frustrating. The Ravens game, we had mentioned. I think True Texans kind of brought up a point about the defense can't carry the water. That's true. We saw it against the Ravens. That's true. I do think I do have a part of me that kind of hopes going into that Ravens game. D'Amico knew it like wasn't a big game for us if we lost, and there was a potential that we saw them again in the playoffs. I'm kind of holding on to hope that he, didn't really make adjustments in that game or come up with any exotic game plans. We saw what he did against Lamar in the playoffs last year. In the first half, he had a great game plan for Lamar. He kind of shut him down with the QB spy with Christian Harris. It seemed that we ran a vanilla defense against them. And the thing that I noticed was the way our D line is taught is like an attack style where they basically just don't think, you just run up field as fast and as quick as you can and beat your guy and force them out of structure and then allow the linebackers to kind of figure it out from there. But they kind of used that to their advantage, and they ran a lot of wham and trap plays. So basically, the tight end would run inside and catch the lineman coming straight downfield and knock him out of the way. And they ran a lot of those plays. That was the worst that I've seen a D'Amico Ryan's led defense in a run defense. I mean, I know they had Derrick Henry, but at least for the first quarter and a half, 2 quarters, it didn't matter who was back there. He wasn't getting touched until 5-7 yards down the field. Like, it was bad, right up the gut too, right between the tackles. So that was, tough to see, but I can't imagine that had something to do with the recent injuries on defense. Like I mentioned, Jimmy Ward was a huge absence. I think that's part of it. I think Aziz being gone was part of it. And I think that we, ran a vanilla game plan where we didn't try to make any adjustments. I think that's part of it as well. But yeah, so that was, something to hold on to hope for there. And then I think I already said it, but I'll say it again. But I thought that was CJ's worst game of his career against the Ravens. And the reason I say that is because it was the most inaccurate he's been. And I say that, I'm not saying I'm on the side of where I think CJ's fine. I think he's still the guy 100%, 1000%. I know some people are questioning him right now, and some of the critical comments are fair, but that game to me was like that because he's been inaccurate throughout the year, but he was consistently inaccurate, and it was like, okay, what's going on? You think the Tank Dell injury might have been on his mind still a little bit. He missed him on the field as a route runner. Like I mentioned, the guys that stepped in were kind of having their own miscues, and so it's tough. Um, there is a silver lining too from that game. We played on Wednesday. We play on Sunday, so it's like another mini bye. So that's good for the guys to kind of reset. But yeah, like my big thing with that game was, I think most of y'all would agree and probably had the same kind of thought process. But um, I think the biggest thing about all this, like us being frustrated, is expectations. Like I know I personally had really high expectations for this team this year, and that was based off of last year. Um, sorry, I'm trying to pull up my TikTok live. I think I have to pull it up, the comments on here too. But anyways, yeah, so I think the reason why this loss stung so much is because of our expectations before the year. We expected this team to be, a Super Bowl contender. Some of us did. I I always said that like what I wanted to see was at least an AFC championship game appearance. And the reason why this game sucked is because, I said we needed to win at least one of two against the Chiefs and the Ravens for me to feel good about us having the ability to make a playoff run. And, even a close loss against this Ravens team on Christmas, I would have been fine with. But the fact that we got dominated the way we did, whatever the score was, scored 2 points and it was from a safety, outscored the offense. We got shut out on offense. That was just heartbreaking. But, the more time I had to kind of think about it, you know, big picture, we're fine. I was just depressing in the moment because, my hopes of us making a run are adjusted. Maybe who knows, crazy stuff happens. We get hot, but it was kind of like a reality check. Maybe we're too high last year, but big picture, you know, second year head coach, second year quarterback, second year coordinator. We won the division back to back years. And like as you play these contender teams like the Bills, like the Chiefs, like the Ravens, the Bills we beat too, but you learn like they didn't become contenders overnight too. Like they've been building these teams for years. And like all this being said, the Ravens haven't won the Super Bowl. I don't even think they've been to the Super Bowl. So I mean, imagine how frustrated their fans are. So I know we all want to win and win right now, but it helps like when you kind of like are able to put it back into perspective and be like, okay, like, we're still on the right track. We're still good. We still clinch the division. We'll be in the playoffs. But yeah, so I mean, that loss stung more for me because I had high hopes. So now I just had to kind of temper those back. I'm still optimistic. I still think that we can definitely win our first round matchup, which will more than likely be against the Steelers and or Chargers. I think we can beat both of them at home, and then from there you go back to Kansas City, where you just played a month ago and got invaluable experience and went toe to toe with them. In my opinion, played really well, and so you have a shot to win that game. You have a shot to win it, and if you win that, like shit, that's right where we want to be. So to me, it's I've had time to digest it. I still feel good going forward. Let me go back through a couple of these comments, catch up on these. And Uncle Ted knows ball. He says that's coaching fault. Scheme is too complex. I agree. Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. He says that sacks are momentum killers. I hit that one. Let's see. And then Uncle Ted says Deontay is a legit beast. Yeah, and so on Deontay, one second. On Deontay, I think it's very similar to the Diggs situation. I will say first, it's awesome to see that we went and got a guy that typically our old Texans wouldn't take a chance on. We wouldn't have gotten Diggs back in the day. We did that, worked out great, and now we're doing it again with Deontay. It feels like Stephon Diggs all over again in the sense that he's a guy that you don't really know his whole story when he's not on your team, but you just kind of see the surface level and assume, oh, he's a cancer, he's a character problem. With Diggs, I was probably guilty of that before we got him. But once we did, I kind of looked more into it and realized, there's two sides to the story. They're very synonymous. Diggs was in Minnesota. He was unhappy that they were kind of pushing him out as the number one guy later on in his career or later on in his tenure there. And so he kind of like basically, let that dissatisfaction be known and kind of pushed his way out, which more power to you. I mean, take matters into your own hands. And then went to the Bills and had a good run there. And then eventually it started to be something similar. And, again, kind of let him know, like, I'm not happy here. And then he goes to the Texans and D'Amico Ryans all offseason when talking about Diggs, he says, I told him, like you start with a clean slate here. I'm not judging you from anything prior, which I thought was really cool. And then, that's the case. And then he comes to a team where like we're ready for his presence. We're going to give him the role he wants. It's like everyone's mutually aligned. He was better than anyone could have imagined. He was a team leader, a captain, a motivator, helped all these young guys. He was productive. He was worth every penny. Unfortunately, he had a season-ending injury, but I'm kind of getting the same vibes off of Deontay. I'm not saying like production will match, but like you look at Deontay Johnson, he was on the Steelers, very productive there. Towards the end, kind of the same thing. Didn't really like, the offense or his production that being involved in the offense. So he kind of moaned to get his way out, but he got screwed. He got traded to the Panthers. It was kind of like an FU. And, he gets traded to the worst team in the league. And then, his quarterback, Bryce Young, gets benched week 4, 5, 6 into the season. And then they're sellers at the trade deadline. And so, he gets traded. And then he gets traded to the Ravens. He didn't get to say where he wanted to go. Goes to the Ravens. And, again, he's like the third, fourth option. And he wants to be the first or second option because he believes in his skill set and he is good enough to be a first or second option. And so he kind of forced his way out there. Like, I'm not happy. I'm not going to suit up. Like, whether you agree with it or not, that's kind of the precipice behind it. But yeah, I talked about this with Harley on the show before on the AFC South roundtable. If, and I agree with him, he said this and I agree 100%. If we still had Tank healthy, I probably wouldn't want Deontay. But with Tank out, I'm all aboard. I'm all about it. Sorry, my throat's kind of, I guess I'm getting some allergies going or something. But yeah, with Deontay, with Tank being out, it was a no-brainer, dude. I mean, the fact that he was there ready for us to claim right when that injury happened, like the timing, the Tank injury is terrible, but like the timing of Deontay Johnson being available on waivers right after that is insane. To me, it's a one-for-one replacement from a positional standpoint. Tank is your Z receiver. He's the other outside receiver. He's outside 70% of the snaps and 30% he's in the slot, normally like in 3x1 sets. And then Deontay Johnson for his career is like 80% out wide, 20% slot. So, and from like a route tree perspective, a skill set perspective, runs the same route tree that Tank was doing, digs, curls, comebacks, all deep outs, all that good stuff. So he'll be running the same, like his skill set translates very well to that. So you couldn't have asked for a better matchup from there. So that is Deontay's a legit beast. Jesse Gonzalez, O-line, can't ID any kind of pressure, and they look lost out there. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's like they'd be better off just standing in their spot and just waiting for someone to, get in their zone, and that's it. Like, don't worry about any of this shit. Just stand there and wait. Quit looking around. Just wait in your spot. When someone comes in your spot, block them. They'd be better off doing that. Uncle Ted says 3-step drops, get the ball out quick. I agree. And that is something that Bobby has started to do, in my opinion. And I've been, kind of clamoring for it, which is pass to open the run. And it seems like he's been doing that. And he's talked about it too. It's happened since the Jacksonville game. So his play calling and scheme overall has gotten better the past couple games, in my opinion. And so that's something we definitely need to do. And it has worked. We need to keep going up tempo, spread them out, quick game, and then let the run. And now they start changing coverages, get out of cover 2, and now the run will come open. Pass to open the run. And then let's see, we got engineer. These excuses have been going on for 17 weeks. At some point, it's a coaching issue they're not willing to admit. No, I agree. I mean, if we're talking about offense, it's 1,000%. And so, I feel like, the play calling, I have my gripes. It's play calling, and then it's, the predictability of play calls with Slowick. But I agree. Like, even if you say, like, I'm not as hard on, Slowick for the play calling as most others. Like, I don't love it 100%. But, even if, let's just say, play calling is not an issue, to engineer's point, if we're making all these mistakes, it still falls back on you for that, for coaching. You're not doing your part on that. So I agree with that. Uncle Ted, run no huddle, Tom Brady style, wear the defense out. Yeah, I mean, it's no coincidence CJ Stroud has looked his best in no huddle. You look at last year, this year, before the end of half, before the end of a game, is like when you see the best CJ Stroud. It's no huddle, hurry up to line of scrimmage, just run the play, don't think, do it. There's not all this bullshit going on of calling the play and thinking about this or that. The defense is spread out. They don't have time to think either. I mean, you think about the Tampa Bay game last year. That's like a prime example. But you would think like if you start to do that so much, and that's like when you're most successful, is like, hey, you know what? I know our scheme. So that's my biggest gripe with Bobby is like adjusting. Like it's like either stubbornness or ego, or I mean, I don't know exactly what, but our personnel is not fit for his scheme at this moment. And so if that's the case, then adapt. You don't have to run this playbook no matter what. You can run variations, or you know what? For a couple weeks, we're going to run this whole new offense just to get us by. And so like that's my whole thing is like adapting. Like I get you want to implement this and it takes time, but like if we're truly trying to win now, you got to fucking change shit, dude. I mean, if you see, quick game, no huddle, spread offense is working, then fucking run that shit all fucking game until it stops. That's what's frustrating. Like the O lineman, we have, O linemen that can't pass protect. We're trying to get them to, block certain ways that don't, fit their skill set. Well, like until you get those people in the building, you need to adjust your system. And I may be wrong, but that's like the feel that I get on that. Engineer says, do you think D'Amico is a good head coach or an excellent DC? This team seems to always fall apart in the big lights and has no plan whatsoever on offense. I think he's a great coach. I mean, he's young, he's learning. Um, you know, there's fair criticisms about him being too loyal. He's probably learning too, in the sense that he's given full delegation into his offensive coordinator and not even, having influence on the game plan, I'm assuming. Or like in situational football where, he's not telling him, hey, don't run the ball here. Like as the head, and I don't know, I'm assuming that he doesn't do that. But I think he's a great coach. I think he's an elite game planner as a defensive coordinator as well. Uncle Ted, best defense is a good offense. Clock management is number one. That is very true. And it's cliche, but they talk about complementary football. You know, the defense, played bad against the Ravens, but it's because the offense couldn't do shit. So, like, eventually, after so many times of you not doing anything on defense, you're going to break eventually. And it goes both ways, too. If the defense is giving up points and the offense has to keep scoring. So, it's a cliche, annoying saying, but complementary football is true. And then Uncle Ted says clock management is what makes Mahomes and Brady so great. I agree. I mean, we all talk about how the Chiefs have won so many close games, but a lot of that is because they know how to execute in those moments. I mean, they'll have the 6, 7, 8 minute drives to close games out. And, if they got a 2-minute drill, they know how to execute. Uncle Ted says, engineer says, D'Amico is at fault for Slovik's woes. He's the head coach. I agree, but I mean, you just going to go and fire D'Amico now for that? I mean, he's a defensive-minded head coach. He's learning, so either he can, be more involved in the game plan, or he can find a new OC. But you don't just get rid of D'Amico. I mean, he's a great D coordinator. He's a great leader. He's a player's coach. I think he has all the qualities that you would want, all the intangibles. Everyone's clamoring for Shane Steichen, and look what he's doing now. I mean, that guy's in hell. Like, oh, he's a creative genius, but you know what? Maybe he's not a good head coach. And you hear about Pat McAfee talking about all these issues about players showing up late, and this and that. And then Steichen addressed it. He's like, yeah, not everyone's going to be on time, exactly on time, or, show up exactly on time. Like, nah, bro. Like that's, so, I mean, it's always, the grass isn't always greener. And, D'Amico is definitely the guy. It's like the D'Amico and CJ, like fire D'Amico and CJ ain't it talk. I am not with that at all. Like y'all are tripping, in my opinion. Like with those two, we're good. You have to remember big picture. Like you don't just turn a franchise around in year 2 of competing and be the best team ever. Like we could make a run still this year, maybe, very littly, maybe, but we are more than fine. The foundation is set. Like this franchise is in good hands. Uncle Ted, Texans are in the playoffs. Anything does happen. I agree. Just have to catch fire at the right time. Yep, exactly, man. Like I know it sucks to hear that, but that's the truth. True Texan says I missed that confident CJ where who didn't block would make a spectacular throw, build his confidence up, and he will hurt many teams. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to blame him. For his body language. I mean, who wouldn't be the most upbeat guy when you're not performing to your best ability? But yeah, I mean, it's also unstable and unreliable and unrealistic to ask him to be Superman on every play. He's shown he can do it and does do it at times, but eventually it's going to get to you. Engineer says, I don't have faith in D'Amico to build a competent coaching staff. The only decent coach on the team is special teams head coach. D'Amico hasn't hired or brought in anyone of competence. Yeah, I mean, so again, I would say he's a young head coach. He's learning. There's the human aspect of firing people, of evaluating people, but I wouldn't just a year and a half in say, oh, he can't. I mean, we won the division 2 years in a row, so like, how bad is it? And then the other part of that too is he's young, so his network is small. So he's taking time to build his net. He's only been in the league for X amount of years, so he only knows so many people. But I would I wouldn't harp too much on that. Me personally, uh, Uncle Ted, I bet Cade Stover becomes a legend this playoffs. I would love that, dude. Farmer Gronk, Engineer, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills are all able to hire quality coaching staff to get the team on track. The Bills had to fire their coordinator midway through the year last year. I mean, like, what have the Bills done? I mean, they haven't. Yeah, they've gone in the playoffs, but I mean, and what did they do relative to us on our our timetable, our time frame? Like, we're way ahead of schedule than the Bills. And he says, I think the narratives fans put on players is a result of a bunch of antisocial people not understanding the world as a business. I'm not sure what you mean on that, but um, Ted says Diggs is 31 and played a lot. Johnson is healthy right now and only 28. Yeah, so I mean, depending on how these next two, potentially 3, 4, however many games go with Deontay, this could have a big impact on the future of what we do in the wide receiver market. He brings up a good point about Diggs. Um, it came out that he wants to sign a 1-year deal, and I don't know if it's worth us to pay a bag to him again when you can maybe sign Deontay for cheap and or draft a guy for on a rookie salary. But we obviously need to address wide receiver, but more importantly, interior O line. Ted says Johnson is a perfect possession 20 to 20 wide receiver. Use Nico in the red zone with Stover and Schultz. I agree, man. If we can get it clicking, it's a good mesh. Engineer says, I think DJ might be better than Tank. The fact that he's only 3 years older than him is crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. And I mean, who knows? We'll see. I hope and I'm confident too. Like, it's been nice that the culture is established, that we're able to take on these quote unquote character issue guys. Um, and it worked out with Diggs. If you have the stability, you can do that. Whereas if you have an organization where it's not, like a tight ship, then it would be more risky. So, and then engineer, when I heard Bobby say football is hard, I knew we were screwed. LMAO. Yeah, that was crazy, bro. Jesse Gonzalez, would you give Johnson a shot for play calling duties? I mean, not this year. I mean, I don't think anybody would fire their coordinator going into the playoffs, but it's tough to know because, you know, my thing is it's the same scheme. So I don't know if he would run the same scheme. Gerard is still young, so I'd imagine this is the scheme that he knows the best. And if we're just going to run the same scheme that is giving us a lot of issues just because these rules they have, then that would be tough. Hiring him, firing Bobby, and then replacing him with Gerard, expecting better results may not be what you're going to get if it's the same offense. I may be wrong. Maybe he would bring in new elements or adapt or adjust, like I was asking Bobby would do. I don't know. I don't think they're going to fire Bobby. They're like, I'm not saying I want him gone or don't want him gone, but there kind of is that element to like where you invest in a player. Like you have a young guy and you don't want to quit on him so early. Like you have like a first round pick and, he hasn't quite gotten it kicked off, but, typically there's like that year 2 to year 3 jump. There's kind of that element with Bobby. Like you've invested all this time and money into him while he's grown as a play caller. And then it would be tough. Imagine if we fired him and then he goes on to become like some badass coordinator. I'm not saying that is what's going to happen or we should or shouldn't fire him, but that's just something to think about too. And knowing D'Amico, that's probably his mindset. I don't think he's going to fire him. But we can talk about that after the season. Zenthu says, do you think they should play their starters or they should rest for the playoffs? Yeah, so it's that is a tough spot for D'Amico to be in. He talked about it in his presser. And we talked about the Ravens game. We looked terrible in the Ravens game. And so he's acknowledged that, and that he said that the starters will play. My assumption is that it will be kind of like a preseason game, but D'Amico's thought process is we need to wash off the stink, essentially, get our confidence back, get our starters out there, get some good drives in, both offensively and defensively, get us prepared for the playoffs. So I suspect that we'll have starters go 1 to 2 quarters. I think they'll do good. There's a couple factors for the Titans here. They are trying to get the number one pick. Brian Callahan is playing both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. He's probably walking into this game as an evaluation game. They're still trying to get something out of it. So it's like a glorified practice for them where maybe they can run some stuff to see how these guys do in certain situations. So it's not necessarily about trying to win for them. And so my big concern, though, is this is, one of the best interior defensive lines against one of the worst interior offensive lines. So my concern is that, and potentially getting CJ hurt. And so I think if we hadn't had this stinker against the Ravens and had won that game, I think the approach to this game might be different. We might be resting these guys. You also have the fact that CJ Stroud is banged up, like he said himself. We don't know how serious his injury is, but so you run the risk of getting hurt. I'm usually a rest guy, but this is a tough dynamic where we need to get confidence going before the playoffs. I thought the Lions with Dan Campbell starting as starters on Monday night in a meaningless game was absolutely insane, and it paid off for him. I guess once you embrace that mindset, it doesn't matter because they went up there and dominated. But I thought that was crazy, but it worked out for them. But so I think they play a couple quarters, and I think best picture is they go out there a couple quarters, play good offense on defense, and then backups come in, Mills and whoever else in the second half. And I think that and the Titans might be playing backups too. They might be playing a bunch of guys to see who'll be on their roster next year. So it's not like they're trying to win. And then we also have the element of they're wearing our Oilers uniforms again, and so we beat them last year when they wore them. I think we'll beat them, but even if we do lose, I could give two shits. It's all about the playoffs. Health is priority number one, and then I would say priority number two is getting some confidence going into the playoffs. And then Uncle Ted says, never hire an offensive-minded head coach. D'Amico is solid. Yeah, I don't know how I feel. Like before we got D'Amico, I wanted the offensive-minded head coach solely for the fact because you have to replace your OC every year. But I mean, it goes both ways. And, you do typically when you have an offensive-minded head coach, they're more aggressive. When you have a defensive-minded head coach, they're more conservative. And that's what we're seeing with the Texans. They would tend to want to lean on their defense. They tend to want to not run a bunch of risky plays. They tend to want to play field position, all that stuff. And that's kind of how this team is. So, like, it may not be the brand of football we want, but it's the one that D'Amico wants, and it's worked for him pretty well so far. Engineer says, I doubt D'Amico's game planning prowess. I don't doubt his prowess game planning, but his inability to hire coaches to take care of other aspects of the team is concerning me. Only Frank Ross is competent, and he was there before. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but again, like I said earlier, it's early. Let's just wait on that. But I mean, that's a fair critique. I mean, I'm not arguing that some of the assistants, aren't the best. I agree. Ted says, well, they did bring in Joe Mixon to run a zone scheme. That is true. When I was saying there was a mismatch of personnel, it's the O-line primarily. They're being asked to do zone blocking, which is typically an undersized, agile O-lineman, when we got like bigger, bulkier guys who are more of a gap scheme where they just block the guy right in front of them. That's my issue. We got Shaq Mason pulling, and he's maybe would have been fine earlier in his career, but him pulling isn't great. Same with, Titus, Laramie. They're not the most agile. Kenyon wasn't very agile. He was a gap scheme blocker. So, I mean, that's been the big gripe for me. Logan says, and you know what, too? Like, there was a stretch, and I kind of quit keeping track, but there was a stretch where we were like always, out of 30 run plays, 80% would be zone plays and like 20% would be gap. And there was a point to where we were starting to run more gap than zone. And that was when our offense was doing the best. It was more of those whams and traps that we were seeing the Ravens do against us, and it worked out great for us. And so I don't know where that went. We need to see more of that. Ted says whoever wins halftime adjustments in the playoff wins championships. Yeah, and we haven't been great at halftime adjustments, so that's concerning. Henry Jack on Facebook, appreciate you tuning in, bro. He said, "Are the Texans going to sign Garrett Wilson?" They wouldn't sign; they would trade, and I don't know that it makes sense. While I would love to have him on our team, I think it's going to be too expensive for us. I had posted a hypothetical that another account posted, which a lot of people thought that I made the graphic, which I didn't. It was like a second and a third and Mechie for Wilson and a fifth. I was like, to me, that was like a no brainer. I think they're going to want at least a first and multiple other picks and or a player. But the other part of that too is I think he has 1 or 2 years left on his rookie deal, and so you're going to have to pay him. He's going to want that 30 million a year more than likely. So do you want to trade all that for basically a 1 or 2 year rental? Whereas where you can go into the draft and get someone almost as productive. Before the Diggs one made sense because our receiving core was still young, but now that Nico's had another year where he's like, production's crazy, top 5 receiver in the league. He's older. He's the alpha in the room just by play. We can, risk getting more young guys in the room via drafts, in my opinion. And that way you have them under rookie contracts and not have to, because our salary cap, we don't have a lot of money to spend next year. Ted says, hell yeah, play the starters. Texans need a blowout win to get hot going on the show. Yeah, I mean, now that I think about it, like if I could be guaranteed the starters played and they didn't get hurt at all, then I'd say, fuck it, play them the whole game and just whoop ass, get that confidence going. But I don't know. Engineer says, we better be aggressive this offseason. We need Garrett Wilson. We need some guards, a new tight end, Tyler Warren. Yeah, he's just a RB2. Judkins, he's a stud from Ohio State, and some defensive pieces. Yeah, so I think my logic on the offense is invest in the interior O-line first, and CJ is the kind of quarterback who can elevate receivers if he has the time. So get him protected first with interior O-line, especially at center. Bring in a veteran who knows the scheme, knows the offense. If we still have that offense, can be a leader up front and maybe a guard as well. And then, maybe get receiver after that. But, to me, there's obviously there's the upper echelon of skill players at receiver that are like game changers. But after that, I hate to say it, but they're almost a dime a dozen. There's just so many damn good receivers. And if you have enough time and you scheme them up right, they can all produce with the best of them. So I would highly prioritize interior line first. And I would prefer to get that through free agency. And then I would even go to other positions after that, if needed. And then maybe hit up receiver. And then the other wrinkle to that too is you have receivers who would be willing to come play with CJ Stroud as well. So that's, another thing in our favor. Logan, we should rest for the second half because they don't deserve rest after that piss poor performance on Christmas, and they have extended rest from this week. Yep, that's a good point. I agree. Engineer D'Amico hired Bobby, so he doesn't have to worry about replacing OC every year. And that's true. Yeah, that's funny how he went from, hottest head coaching candidate to maybe losing his job. Uncle Ted says hiring coaches is the GM's fault. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure Caserio plays a role. Zenthu, do you think Tank is going to be back next season? I think I answered that over there, but if he does, maybe a game or two, but it's going to be tough, man. But if anybody can do it, it's him. I mean, he's a tough SOB, man. And we got Big Boom. Would you be interested in Jamal Adams because he can play that safety role that Jimmy and Petrie? Dude, okay, I should read it. Big Boom says, would you be interested in Jamal Adams because he can play that safety role that Jimmy and Petrie had, and you can shift Kamari back to corner? Dude, I have been thinking this, but I have not said it. It's funny because I've talked crap about Jamal Adams, like when the Titans signed him. He is just like Jimmy and just like Petrie. Like the skill set is the same. He's kind of an undersized, slow safety he's kind of like a tweener between safety and linebacker. So he's not great in high safety and deep coverage. And I feel like he's been put in that position and he's been getting exposed. But yeah, we lost Jimmy and Petrie, who were thriving in that star role where they're basically a third linebacker in our 4-2-5 defense. I have thought this and not said it. I hadn't even looked into it, but is he a free agent still? Because if he is, I love that idea. And you literally just put him in there and say, hey, all right, this play like you kind of dumb it down for him, but like it's all about using players at their best skill sets, and that's his best use. Awesome question. I agree, Big Boom. I am very interested in that. Logan, we need to get Ibuka or Jeremiah Smith instead of Wilson, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, even then, there's like, I haven't dove into it, but I mean, you can get good receivers in the second and third round, and let's just say Deontay, we extend him and he's the Z. Now we need a slot. Ibuka is a great slot. There's plenty of great slot receivers coming out in the draft. Ted says the great teams never invest in wide receivers. That's facts. And then we got CCTX says, do you think if CJ Stroud went down before the playoffs started, Mills could win us a playoff game? I do, man. I do. Mills Mafia. He's got a big neck like me. Got that. His neck's real big, but I think Mills could win a game. He would have the benefit of coming in fresh and not being scarred by this O line, so he wouldn't be as shell shocked as Stroud has been. And he has the arm. I've always thought I'm kind of high on Mills. I think he's one of the better backups in the league. I know that's not the consensus, but I think he's pretty damn good, man. I think he could win us a game against the Steelers or the Chargers. And then we got Big Boom. I would love Scattaboo in the Texans next year. He would be a menace. Man, he is so fun to watch, dude. So the college I played for, Incarnate Word in San Antonio, they were in the quarterfinals of the playoffs 2 years ago, and they played Sacramento State. And that's when I first saw Cam Scattaboo. And I said, this dude is a son of a bitch, dude. And so it's been so cool to see him go to Arizona State and get his shine. It just goes to show, I mean, you just assume because a guy's playing at a certain level that they're not good. But I mean, if it weren't for the transfer portal, we wouldn't know who Cam Scattaboo is. But yes, that would be sick. He is a beast, dude. I mean, he did it all today. He ran it, he threw it, he caught it. That dude's a beast. Let's see. Engineer says we should avoid these kinds of questions. I didn't see what the question was. Oh, yeah, that is true. We should avoid the injury questions. I agree. Uncle Ted, yeah, so why pay a wide receiver, draft them, 4 years of control for Lab McConkey is insane. Yes, so Lab McConkey is a receiver that I wanted. Before we signed Diggs, Lab McConkey was like top of my list. And you see him now, I mean, he's producing like crazy. Yeah, and I think he was third round or late second. I mean, what a steal, dude. Engineer, but every team targets these elite wide receivers. Hell, even KC got Hollywood Brown. You can't say that, dude. Dude, none of those guys are elite. I mean, Worthy's nice. He was a high draft pick, but Hopkins is on the tail end of his career. He said every team targets these elite wide receivers. Even KC got Hollywood Brown, Worthy, and Hopkins. I wouldn't call any of those guys elite by any means. Worthy's nice. He could become an elite receiver. Hollywood Brown is nice, but he's not an elite receiver in my opinion. Hopkins was an elite receiver. He's a productive one now. And then Uncle Ted says Hopkins and Hollywood are just guys now. Yeah. And then Engineer says, but they still went out and got Hopkins, and I forgot Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice was a nice pick, but he got hurt. But yeah, I mean, we did the same thing. Like, we have guys. We went out and got Diggs, and we had the best trio we thought in the league. And then Tank got hurt. We went out and got Deontay. That's just, we couldn't trade. The trade deadline was passed. I mean, we're not doing that ourselves. And then let's see, Logan, Jamal Adams just got cut from the Lions today. He would be a nice, oh my God, he just got cut today. I need to go make a post, dude. He would be a perfect fit for this defense. Holy shit. That's crazy. If we don't claim him, we're tripping, dude. I would be surprised if D'Amico doesn't. Onstra on IG says offensive line can't pick up basic games and stunts. Facts. ADILK says we still believe in CJ. I agree, bro. T2 City of Sin would be nice to add some speed to his game. Not sure who he's talking about. If that's CJ, I agree. -2 music. Shout out Gerard. Rather figured out now than being too late. Hell yeah, G. Appreciate you, bro. I'm just making sure I got caught up on Instagram. Sorry, guys. Space Jam says most MF have lost faith, and honestly, brother, those fake ass fans piss me off. I mean, you can't get mad. I mean, we're all like that, and you can't. The people that are upset, you can't blame them. And I wouldn't call them fake fans. I mean, I get where you're coming from, but we all fan our own way. You know, sometimes I'm pessimistic, but overall, I'm pretty optimistic. But I don't get upset. It's all good, dude. I mean, at least we know we're in a good spot. Like it sounds like you and I agree. Like we're in a good spot, but it's all good. And then H Town made me says that's an awesome name on IG. NFL is bogus. It's no different than WWF. Yeah, I mean sometimes I think that quite a bit. Below 2-4 best case scenario. We get the AFC Championship game based solely on matchups. I think we can beat the Steelers. I think we can beat the Chiefs and then either play the Bills or Ravens in the AFC Championship. So this is awesome. I agree, Bilo. It's all about matchups. So like as bad as that Ravens loss stunk, going into it, I thought that we matched up good against them. Um, their pass defense had been one of the worst in the league, but they figured it out the past 2, 3, 4 weeks before playing us. And it turns out I walked away from that game thinking we match up terrible against the Ravens. It's all about their strengths versus the opponent's weaknesses, and all of their strengths was smash mouth football in the trenches, winning both line of scrimmages, and that's terrible for us. So I agree with that, and I agree we match up better against the Chiefs. And like I said earlier, we just played there a month ago, went toe to toe with them. We lost by 8, but it was a close game, and those refs really did fucking sell, dude. I mean, they legit single-handedly cost us like almost 20 points alone. So, I mean, like 4 or 5 plays, all those points, 2 or 3 go the other way. It's a ball game. So I agree with that. And so I've kind of gone through that process. The thing that my best case scenario is we win first round against Steelers or Chargers, somehow win in KC. Like I think it could be a game. And then from there, your next path, I would much rather play the Bills, who we already beat. I'm not scared of the Bills. I'm terrified of the Ravens. And so it's to his point, it's all about matchups. And then he does say the worst case scenario, one and done. Yes, that would suck. But yeah, that's it on IG. Let me get back over here. I'm hyped about this Jamal Adams news, dude. Uncle Ted, they traded for him. Signed free agent wide receivers are way overslotted in the cap. I agree. Ted knows ball. Logan, Mills is my GOAT. Engineer, Mills is the second best QB in the AFC South. I agree, bro. Did y'all see that video I quote tweeted today of Anthony Richardson talking about his back? He like didn't play. He's like, yeah, I just get back spasms. They just happen out of nowhere. Like it's been happening since like junior high. It's like, what? Like they drafted a guy who can just like all of a sudden not play because his back starts tightening up. Like, how did y'all miss that, dude? Ted says Chiefs go after depth. Yeah, and the Chiefs have added guys out of necessity. They've had a shitload of injuries in the wide receiver room. And then let's see. Logan, to be honest, I'm glad we lost to the Ravens because if we won that, we would play them in the first round pissed off and probably lose that. That's a good point. I mean, that would not have been worth it. And, it's hard to beat a team twice. That's a really good point. I agree with that, bro. Yeah, these comments have been good. I wasn't able to get the TikTok up. I'm not sure if y'all were on there. If you're on TikTok and I wasn't responding, I apologize. I'll try and find a way to get that on the screen next time. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of in a roundabout way kind of covered most everything. The Chiefs loss was a tough one, but I saw promise out of it. It's just the injuries that came about that was tough. The Ravens loss, I was depressed. I was depressing. But when I went back and thought about it and put it into perspective, I realized my expectations were too high. This kind of lowered expectations. And then the Titans game coming up, game don't mean shit. It'd be nice to beat them because they're wearing our uniforms and because fuck the Titans. That's why. Play the starters for a half is what it sounds like. Get them some confidence. And then I think the back end of that, we can be able to still win the game. If we don't, whatever. But shout out Lance Shepard, my guy Stressens. Appreciate you, bro. It's my guy. I do not have super chat. I think I just became eligible. I need to do that. But yeah, if you want to catch up, I do have it on the live, but I do not have super chat. I need to do that. Oh shit. He says he's getting in from the Rockets game. Damn, that traffic is bad. I didn't get to watch it that closely, but I saw we won. So yeah, to me, the Rockets and the Texans are very similar teams, young teams, with defensive minded head coaches that were former players. They kind of have a team that has an attitude about them. We have bad offenses. But yeah, we're young teams. They're both still learning how to win. You know, the Texans lose games they shouldn't. The Rockets lose games they shouldn't from time to time. But the future is bright for both teams, man. It's awesome. It's an awesome time to be a Houston sports fan. You know, the Astros have given us a good run. We'll see what happens this year with the Astros. You know, they've at least signaled like they're not, you know, completely rebuilding. They're trying to keep that window open. So I'm excited about them as well. And Shep says facts just alike. I agree, man. It's crazy. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I got. I got my new sign up here for my brother. Shout out, buddy. Texans commenter. And then this one's for my father-in-law. I'm all backwards here. There we go. Uh, Looks like it's kind of like got smushed, but it's all good. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't really got anything else unless y'all got any more questions. I can go for a little bit longer. If not, we can wrap it up. But I appreciate y'all support. Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about it, but the watch party we had for the Chiefs game was great. We had a great turnout, over 200 plus people there. You know, it was great to meet a lot of you all here, and people that I interact with on Twitter and Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. It's been an awesome community. You know, there was great beer, great food. The game was good for times. Aziz showed up. That was so crazy. He had commented on my Instagram post, you know, joking like, "Oh, I might have to show up since I can't play anyways." And I thought for sure he wouldn't come, but um, he showed up. He brought a bunch of toys for the toy drive. I talked to him like the whole game. I mean, any fan that walked up to him and wanted to talk to him, took a picture. He did all that while the game was going on, and it was just crazy that like afterwards, I was like, I literally just watched the Chiefs game with the starting linebacker of the Houston Texans. But Aziz is back. He was missed tremendously. It'll be nice to have him and Christian Harris on the field at the same time. Two tone setters, two dogs. They both got speed. Um, you know, this I'm so happy that he's back. I mean, I watched his interview today. That was like 15 minutes long in the locker room, and he mentioned how that was like the deepest, darkest time of his life. And he even like questioned playing again because he was kind of confused the way that they were labeling the hit. Like he was wondering, like, is my whole game like that? If I come back, am I just going to constantly be keep getting suspended and picked on for that? So it was kind of crazy to like hear that stuff. And I think part of what we should take away from all that is we forget, like, I know we're all fans, but like at the end of the day, these are still people and humans, whether they make a bunch of money or not. I guess Aziz's case was different because he was getting, personal stuff and they were attacking his character. But, it's a good reminder. I think I tweeted earlier, like the Texas game, I felt bad for that kicker. I'm glad they won because that kid, I'm sure he would have got, and he probably still will get a lot of BS, but it would have been real bad. But his return will be huge for us. And then pull up and get a hoodie. I'll have to make you one, bro. And then engineer says the Casey game, I was fine losing. The Raven game showed me this team lacks dog. Yeah, that was just tough. It was depressing, bro. And Shep says Al free demon home. Man, that video was hilarious. Man, I can't wait. But yeah, that's all I got, man. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'll see y'all online and let's beat the Titans and make a run, baby.